Hello, my name's Marjorie. 10 years ago, my husband walked out on me and our 5 kids, no warning, no goodbye, just a note on the counter. Since then, I've built something from ashes scrubbing floors, selling my wedding ring, baking at midnight to feed my family. But just when we started healing, he came back smiling, asking to see the kids and hiding something worse. What kind of man disappears, then returns to rewrite the story? And what kind of mother does the world expect me to be when forgiveness feels like betrayal? I woke up to silence, a kind that didn't feel peaceful, just wrong. The side of the bed where Carlton usually slept was cold, untouched. I figured maybe he had gone out early, but something tugged at me. The air was too still. I walked into the kitchen, still in my robe, rubbing sleep from my eyes, and then I saw it. A single piece of paper folded neatly, resting next to the coffee pot. 7 words. That's all it took to break a 10-year marriage. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. No explanation, no fight the night before, no slammed door, just a note and 5 sleeping children in the next room. My body reacted before my mind did. I clutched the counter to keep from falling. My knees buckled, but I didn't let them hit the floor. I had 5 pairs of eyes who'd be waking up any minute, and I wasn't going to be the reason their world shattered before breakfast. Dorian was the first to notice something was off. He was only 11 but sharp as a blade. "Mom, where's Dad?" he asked, cereal spoon midair. I lied without blinking. He had to take a trip, work stuff. My voice was steady, too steady. He stared but didn't press. That was his gift and his curse. He held things in, just like me. I told them their dad was busy, that he'd call soon. I smiled so much that week my cheeks hurt. Inside I was spinning. I called his job, they said he'd quit 2 days ago. I tried his mother, she hadn't heard from him since last Christmas. I even called the hospital, hoping for anything. Dead, alive, missing, something. But no one had seen him. The police officer who took the report was kind, but shrugged. If he left willingly, it's not a crime, he said. Like abandoning 5 kids wasn't a damn crime. Bills stacked up. I added hours at the diner. Sleep became optional. Every time one of the kids asked, "When's Daddy coming back?" I gave the same answer, "Soon." And I hated myself a little more each time. 2 weeks later, I went to apply for emergency aid. I waited 3 hours in a freezing office, only to be told I didn't qualify. "You're still legally married," the caseworker said without looking up. "Your husband needs to be present." "He's not present," I snapped. "That's the whole damn point." She just shrugged. "We can't process until we have proof of abandonment." "How do you prove someone vanished when they did it quietly?" She didn't answer. That night, I found one of Carlton's old shirts stuffed in the laundry basket. I sat on the bathroom floor holding it like it was him, like I could still smell him on the collar. But the scent was gone, just like he was. I tucked the kids in one by one. Dorian pretended to be asleep, but I saw the wet patch on his pillow. I didn't say anything. That was the night I stopped hoping. I didn't know it then, but something inside me had started to shift, not break. Harden. The mornings after that felt mechanical. I wasn't waking up, I was rebooting. Alarm, kids, lunches, teeth brushed, socks matched most of the time. I wasn't even tasting my coffee anymore. It just kept my hands warm. I moved through the routine like muscle memory. Smiles on autopilot, voice steady, nothing real underneath. I'd park outside the diner before my shift and just sit there, forehead resting against the steering wheel. "Just get through today," I'd whisper. That became my mantra. Not things will get better. Just survive the next 12 hours. Sunday came, and I thought church might help. Familiar songs, familiar people, something grounding. I dressed the kids like we were still a whole family. I even curled Briseis' hair and found matching shoes for Nova. I pasted on a smile that felt too wide and too still. We sat in the same pew we always had. A few glances came our way, but nobody said anything. After service, I waited until the crowd thinned out and approached the board in the side room. Pastor Lyle looked surprised. "Sister Marjorie, everything all right?" I gave the polite version. "My husband's left. It's been a few weeks. I was hoping the church might be able to help, at least with groceries." Or my voice trailed off under his cautious eyes. Sister Gwen cleared her throat. It's complicated, isn't it? We haven't heard from Carlton. And you two are still legally married, yes? My cheeks burned. What does that have to do with feeding my kids? It's not that we don't want to help, she said, voice soft like fake velvet. But we're called to protect families, not encourage division. So because he disappeared and didn't bother to sign a piece of paper, I don't qualify as struggling? No one answered. Gwen just reached for a clipboard and busied herself. I left with nothing but the sting of shame behind my eyes. Back home, I didn't cry. I grabbed a bucket and started scrubbing the bathroom floor like it insulted me. Bleach burned my nose. My fingers cracked. I didn't stop. Carlton used to make pancakes on Sundays, humming off-key, flipping them while I curled the girl's hair. That version of life felt fictional now, a lie with good lighting. Later, I shut the bathroom door, sat on the cold tile, and let my forehead rest against my knees. No sobs, just heat behind my eyes that wouldn't fall. That night, I walked past the hallway shelf and saw the church's framed photo, Carlton, the kids, matching outfits. I took it down. If God only helps those who help themselves, I muttered, then I guess it's time I start. I pulled out a notebook from the drawer and flipped past the used pages. The back was still blank, clean, untouched, like something could still be written. I titled it in bold, Plan A. The first laugh after Carlton left came during dinner, over a spilled cup of juice. Dorian made some joke about Kellen eating like a velociraptor, and all 5 of them cracked up. Even me, just for a second. Then the guilt hit me hard, because for a moment we felt okay, and that terrified me. The house was quieter now, not empty, just rebalanced. We found new routines. Dorian set the table without being asked. Ansel walked Briseis to her bus stop. Some mornings I thought maybe, just maybe, we were learning to float without him. Then the knock came. It was a Tuesday. Sunlight spilled into the hallway as I opened the door. 2 officers stood there, one flipping through a small notepad. Marjorie Evers? I nodded, heart dropping. We're following up on an unpaid account, one said. Loan in the name of Carlton Evers. This address is listed as the billing location. I blinked. He hasn't lived here in months. They glanced at the kids clustered behind me. Is he reachable? No. I don't even know what state he's in. A pause. Then, flatly, well, ma'am, this is a civil suit. Just doing our part. I noticed Mrs. Clary next door pulling back her curtain, eyes sharp and unblinking. The pit in my stomach grew heavier. I'm not paying for something I didn't even know existed, I said, but my voice cracked halfway through. They handed me a sealed envelope, nodded, and left. Dorian quietly closed the door behind them. The silence afterward was louder than the knock. Later, I found Ansel crouched behind the couch. Are they coming back? Not if I can help it, I said, though I didn't believe myself. That night, I stood at the kitchen counter trying to call the loan company. The woman on the phone asked for proof of separation, then a signature from Carlton to release liability. I don't have his signature, I snapped. Then we can't remove you from the account, Mom. I laughed. It wasn't funny, but it came out bitter and sharp. Of course not, I muttered, hanging up. I remembered Carlton telling me once, let me handle the bills, babe, it's just easier that way. I'd trusted him. Stupid me. Hours later, I walked past the corkboard near the hallway. Wedding photos, school schedules, sticky notes with grocery lists. It all looked like someone else's life. I reached for the pushpins and tore everything down. The wedding photo came last. My fingers shook. If he wanted to disappear, then he didn't get to leave pieces of himself behind like scars. I lit a match, dropped it onto the photo in the sink, and watched his smile curl into black. I aired out the kitchen the next morning, trying to clear the smell of burnt paper. The smoke had gone, but something sour lingered. I opened the windows, wiped down the sink, and went about the routine. Lunches, backpacks, faces kissed on the forehead. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was heavier than usual. Dorian had become my shadow, always watching, always ready to help. But Ansel, he grew quieter. His sketchbooks stopped appearing on the coffee table. He wasn't humming to himself anymore. He barely spoke during dinner. I told myself it was just the season changing. A phase. Kids go through them. But then came the school call. Ansel missed first period and wasn't marked present all day, the voice on the line said. Everything okay at home? I paused. Define okay. When he walked through the door later, I didn't wait. You skipped school? I held up the automated letter from the district. And this math grade? What is going on with you, Ansel? He slammed his backpack down. What's going on? Dad left. That's what? My breath caught. At least he had the guts to walk out, he shouted, instead of pretending like this is still a family. The door to his room shook as he slammed it shut. That night, he didn't come home. Dorian and I drove street by street until the sky turned orange. We asked neighbors, called classmates. I dialed the police. A report was filed. Descriptions given. But every officer's face looked the same tired sympathy with no promises. I sat on the laundry room floor and stared at the dryer spinning like it had answers. My heart was pounding so hard it echoed in my teeth. I'm losing them, I whispered, one by one. Flashbacks played without asking. Carlton holding Ansel as a newborn, rocking him in the same armchair that now held a laundry basket. He looks just like me, Carlton had once said, proud and oblivious. When Ansel came back the next morning, he looked older. Or maybe I was seeing clearer. He handed me a crumpled note. Just wanted to see if anyone would come looking. I didn't yell. I just pulled him into me. He sobbed into my neck. I didn't know what else to do, he said. I know, I whispered, but don't ever disappear like that again. That night I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring, back eyes bloodshot, jaw set like stone. If I didn't start fighting harder, this house wouldn't survive me either. By the end of that week, I had reorganized the entire hallway closet, cleaned the baseboards with a toothbrush, and alphabetized the spice rack. Grief had made me restless, but that night, as I sat at the kitchen table in silence, something new stirred beneath the exhaustion. Purpose. I opened my notebook, the one I had labeled Plan A. Page after page filled with crossed-out figures, messy sketches, late-night ideas scrawled between bites of reheated leftovers. I wasn't dreaming anymore. I was plotting. Is this real? Dorian asked as he peeked over my shoulder. I was drawing a logo, a whisk, crossed with a wooden spoon, with Marjorie's maid underneath. I nodded, though my fingers trembled slightly. The next morning, I sat in a glass office across from a loan officer, who smiled like he'd already made up his mind. I handed him the proposal, the numbers, the goals. He skimmed, nodded, then paused. You're listed as married, but there's no cosigner? My husband's gone. I'm doing this alone. Legally, you're not single. Without a spouse's signature or collateral, we can't approve. I pressed my lips together. He didn't look up again, just pushed the papers back toward me. I'm sorry. I walked out with my jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. I sat in the car for a full 10 minutes before I opened the glove box. Carlton's wedding band gleamed back at me. Mine was tucked inside it, both still in that same velvet box we'd been handed at the altar. Flashback hit me hard, Carlton sliding the ring onto my finger, whispering, "We got this, babe." But he didn't. I did. I drove straight to the pawn shop off Livingston. The clerk didn't even ask why. He just said, 300. That's the best I can do. I'll take it. That same night I met a woman in a Target parking lot, Craigslist. She handed over a used but sturdy countertop oven for $250. We exchanged a nod to tired women in hoodies, making ends meet without explanation. Back home, I scrubbed the kitchen counters, preheated the oven, and started with something simple, blueberry muffins. The first tray burned. The second came out lopsided, but the third fluffy, golden, and warm tasted like something that wasn't defeat. Nova wandered in, still in her pajamas. She took a bite, eyes wide. "Mommy, this is better than birthday cake." I smiled for the first time that whole week. Then I flipped to a clean page in my notebook and wrote, Week 1, goal $50 in orders. The next morning, I boxed up the cooled muffins and started frosting a batch of red velvet cupcakes. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and melted butter. I was piping swirls of cream cheese when I heard it, the knock. Not a polite tap, a firm, deliberate knock. I wiped my hands on a towel and opened the front door. There he was, Carlton, thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes. He wore the same kind of smile he used to flash when he forgot a birthday and tried to charm his way out of it. "Hey, Marjorie," he said, voice low. "Can we talk?" My pulse slowed, but my fingers curled tight around the doorknob. You've had 10 years to talk, I replied. Now's not a great time. I miss them. I want to see the kids. One visit. I stared at him, searching for something real in his face. But it was like looking through a window into a burned-out house. Nothing left. You don't get to want, I said. You forfeited that when you left. I didn't wait for a response. I shut the door, firm but controlled. The cupcakes didn't even lose their shape. That night, while clearing dishes, I noticed Dorian hadn't touched his food. He was scrolling his phone with a distant look. What's going on? I asked. He hesitated. Dad, he messaged me. Last week. I froze mid-step. What? He said he's been thinking about us. About me. I leaned against the counter, breath tight. Why didn't you tell me? Because part of me wanted to believe him, Dorian admitted. And part of me didn't want to upset you. My voice came out quieter than I expected. He's still breaking this family, just with a softer knife now. Later that night, I texted him. You do not contact them again unless it goes through me. He responded fast. You can't control everything. My fingers didn't shake as I typed back. Try me. The next morning, I drove to the hardware store, picked up a lockbox, and drilled it onto the mailbox post myself. Mail, texts, memories. He wouldn't slip through the cracks anymore. She screwed the lockbox shut and muttered to herself, no more surprises. That afternoon, I was scraping batter out of a mixing bowl when Dorian came into the kitchen with his laptop clutched tight to his chest. Mom, he said, voice tense, you need to see this. He set the laptop on the table, screen already loaded. A GoFundMe page, bright and bold, stared back at me. Carlton's face smiling like a wounded hero sat right under the headline, starting over after family hardship. My throat tightened. The page went on about how he was a loving father of 5 trying to rebuild after unexpected loss and hardship. He even mentioned me, his ex-wife, who's been through so much, like we were still in the same sentence. Is this real? I asked, already knowing the answer. He posted it last week, Dorian said. It's getting shares. Donations, too. I scrolled down. My name, our city. Our kids' blurred photos lifted from old Facebook posts. Then the comments. She must have pushed him away. Men like him deserve another chance. I sent $25. Hope he gets his family back. I slammed the laptop shut, chest burning. He's fundraising off of our pain, I hissed. Hez selling a lie. The kids were in the next room, but I knew they heard. Briseis peeked in, face pale. Are people going to come here? Ansel stepped beside her. This is harassment. I sat at the table, hands curled into fists. Legal options flickered in my mind. Defamation, privacy violations. But I also saw the headlines. Estranged wife sues broke father. Dorian leaned forward. If he's not going to stop, maybe we don't either. That night, I called Carlton. You take it down or I swear I will end this in ways you can't predict. He chuckled like we were still playing house. You always did bark loud, Marjorie, but you never bit. I gritted my teeth. Try me again. You've confused survival with weakness. He didn't hang up. I did. Then I reached for my phone and tapped a name I hadn't used in years, my old divorce attorney. She didn't wait for his reply. She'd already started dialing her lawyer. I didn't sleep much after that call. Morning light poured in like nothing had changed, but everything had. Over breakfast, the kids were unusually quiet. Dorian caught my glance and gave the slightest nod. It was time. After dinner, I asked them all to stay at the table. I walked to my bedroom and came back with a folder. I set it down in the center thick with screenshots, text transcripts, and a copy of the letter my lawyer helped draft. I didn't speak for a moment. Just let them see it. That's what he's been doing, I said, lying, publicly, to strangers for money. I've spoken with an attorney. We can act, but before anything else happens, you deserve to know everything. Briseis reached for the pages first, eyes darting across the screen captures. Nova leaned into my side. Kellen picked at a thread on the placemat. Dorian broke the silence. He never asked how we're doing, just what we can give. Briseis looked up. He doesn't even know my favorite color. Ansel's voice came steady. We're not his excuse for a second chance. I didn't cry, I was past that. But I felt something in my chest unclench. Later that night, after the house went quiet, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out paper. Not email, not a text, a letter, my handwriting. You didn't just walk away, I wrote, you disappeared. Now that we're standing again, you want to return to what exactly? A family you abandoned? Or the story of one? I paused only once before sealing the envelope. I didn't write to be forgiven. I wrote to close the book. The next morning, I dropped it in the mailbox and locked it shut. By noon, an email came in. I understand. I stared at those 2 words. For once, he didn't argue. That night, the kids set the table without being asked. Dorian cracked a joke about Nova's lopsided ponytails. Briseis offered to light the candle, and I let her. We gathered around the flame. I looked at each of them, whole, loud, imperfect mine. I lit the candle and whispered, "We begin again." The morning after the candlelit dinner felt different, not loud or triumphant, just quietly whole. No tension in the air, no waiting for the next shoe to drop. Nova danced around the kitchen with a towel over her shoulders like a cape. Kellen read from a cereal box like it was scripture. Briseis sat by the window, sketching. Dorian handed me a manila envelope. "Acceptance letter," he said. "Local state college. I start next semester." I hugged him hard enough to make him roll his eyes, but he didn't pull away. Later that week, a forwarded letter landed in the mailbox. It was postmarked from another state, hand-addressed in handwriting I hadn't seen in a decade. Carlton. "I didn't come back for the right reasons," it began. "I was broke, desperate. I told myself I missed you all, but I missed who I used to be when I was with you. That version of me didn't exist anymore." He said he'd moved into a shelter, that he was trying to stay clean, trying to be honest for the first time. "You don't owe me anything. Thank you for protecting them." I couldn't. I folded the letter, put it in a drawer. That was enough. A few days later, I stood in line at the county office, finalizing custody paperwork. No contest, full guardianship, sealed. Then I went to the bank, opened my business account, Marjorie Bell's Bakery, sole proprietor. No cosigner, no shared name, just mine. That evening, after dishes were done and backpack zipped, I slipped out to the backyard. The air had cooled. Wind rattled the fence. "He left with a lie," I whispered. I lived in the truth. Memories flickered. The slammed door, the police lights, Ansel's empty bed, flour-dusted counters. And still we stood. "We didn't just survive you," I said to no one. "We outgrew you." Sunday came. Pancakes flipped on the griddle. The table buzzed with laughter. All 5 kids crowded around, spilling syrup and stories. I set down the last plate and looked at Themi family, rebuilt brick by brick. A new photo hung on the wall now. No Carlton, just us. Grinning, real. He missed watching them become whole. I didn't. Some stories don't end with forgiveness, they end with freedom. You know, if someone told me 10 years ago that I'd end up here not just surviving but standing tall, I would have laughed through tears. Or maybe just cried harder. But here's what I've learned the hard way. Closure doesn't come when someone says sorry, it comes when you stop waiting for one. You don't have to carry someone else's guilt to prove you're strong. And sometimes, protecting your peace means closing a door and bolting it shut, even when it used to be called home. To every single mom out there, every father doing it alone, every child trying to make sense of why someone left, you are not broken, you are rebuilding. There's no timeline for healing, but there is a power in reclaiming your story. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved in order to love yourself more? Leave a comment and let me know type 1 if this story hit home for you, or tell me where you're watching from. And hey, if you didn't like it, that's okay too. Tell me why and where you're tuning in. I'm listening. If the story moved you, helped you breathe a little deeper, or reminded you that you're not alone, please subscribe to this channel. There's more to come, more stories, more truth, more strength. From one survivor to another. Thank you for watching.